My name is Carrie Bielenberg, and I work for the District Attorney's Office here in Fort Collins. We're the 8th Judicial District, so we represent Larimer County and Jackson County, and I am our diversion coordinator. So I have worked with our office for the past 3.5 years, but diversion itself has existed for over 25 years in our office. So we are a very long-standing diversion program across the state of Colorado. At this point, there are 20 of our 22 jurisdictions that actually do diversion in the state. So it's a more common program as we've grown over time. Previous to me, though, the diversion program was ran by a victim's advocate and a investigator, a DA investigator. So that is a sworn officer. What was really cool about when I was brought onto our office is we received funding specifically to have a social worker in this position. And I think this has made all the difference for youth to truly get the diversion experience and be diverting them away from the court system. So now they have the opportunity to meet with a social worker, somebody who has a background in figuring out what these youth could benefit from long term in keeping them out of our system, and ideally never having them interact with the criminal justice system or a district attorney or magistrate or judge. So when a youth is referred to diversion, they come directly to myself or our other diversion staff who also has a social work background, and we meet with them outside of the court setting. So these youth ideally are never setting foot in a courtroom, and they are meeting with us to get to know them a little bit better, hear their circumstances, why they received the ticket or the charge that they did, and then figure out a plan to help them to be successful in not only resolving their case, but also hopefully never coming to see us again. So not only with their cases are we addressing the offense itself and why they're here to see us, but we're also coming up with plans for if they could benefit from mental health services or a coach or a mentor or tutoring with school, because truly we want these youth to be successful in all aspects of their life and again, never come back to see us in our system again. So that's kind of diversion in a nutshell. It's a very short-term program compared to court and probation supervision itself. Most youth are able to complete within 3 to 5 months their diversion commitment. And like I said, lots of mental health resources, use of restorative justice to repair the harm that's been done to the community and help them to learn bigger picture how their actions can affect other people in their lives or maybe even people they've never met before. We also help link youth to supportive services if they're struggling with substance use or even early intervention, just exposure to use or peer pressure itself. So educational classes, maybe meeting one-on-one with a counselor or a mentor or some other type of support. And then finally, school. We want youth to be successful in school. So tutoring services, connecting with their teachers or supportive people at school, whatever we can do to help them to feel supported. So in our Fort Collins schools and Poudre School District, of youth who've been cited for a crime or received a ticket, over half of them go through the diversion program. So they are ideally never entering a courtroom, having to appear before a judge or magistrate or even speak with a district attorney. So that's a huge success. So a big part of our diversion program comes with collaboration in our community as well as with our SROs. So when we receive a ticket for a youth, even if that ticket was out in the community, maybe they were breaking into vehicles or something occurred over summer break, we are reaching out to our SROs because they know our youth best. And so we're getting more collateral information about how they've been doing in school, if they've had other incidents at school that we should be aware of. Because again, our hope is that they're successful and not coming back to see us in the future. And so if we have a youth, for example, who has been breaking into vehicles out in their community, and then we reach out to school and find out, well, they're actually also struggling in their science class and their math class and could really benefit from a tutor, or their parent has been reaching out to the SRO to try and get additional resources for mental health services. We want to know that so that we can help to implement those services and those supports to help the youth to be successful ultimately. Many of our cases that come through diversion do have an identified victim and even qualify for what's called our Victims' Right Act. So what that means is the victim and their family do get a say in ultimately how the case is handled within the district attorney's office and sometimes play a role in the diversion requirements. Oftentimes, we use our restorative justice program through the city of Fort Collins, where the victim themselves, or even somebody who could stand in for our victim, they do get to speak on their behalf and have a say in what our diversion youth are required to complete or how they make amends to their community, themselves, their families, and their victim as well. It's important to also recognize that we do have victims advocates in our office who reach out to those victims and their families, and they convey what diversion requirements are going to look like, get any feedback, but ultimately at the end of the day, it is up to the district attorney's office and our district attorney in juvenile court to take into account all of those considerations in making a decision about how we handle a case. As I said, many of those cases do go through diversion. So just because we have an identified victim or it's a Victims' Rights Act case, they do not have to go to court. We're able to be creative in meeting the needs of our victim and also helping to serve our diversion youth, which is great. And we're able to do that through the resources we have in our community, as well as the support of our SROs who advocate for the diversion youth as well as the victims in their cases. So sometimes we get questions about youth who may be undocumented or have immigration status cases. That is not something that we have an ethical or legal obligation to ever notify. There's not some type of notification that goes out if a youth receives a ticket or is going through our diversion program. So it is important to recognize that, nor would we ever treat a case differently if a family were to self-disclose that that was something that they were going through or experiencing. So I think it's important to share that piece as well. It's also important to know that we cannot deny a youth diversion if they have an inability to pay fees or fines or restitution, if there's restitution owed in a case. We're very mindful in diversion. We actually do not impose fees. There are sometimes program costs, which oftentimes we're lucky in this community to utilize scholarship funds where we can, insurance if a youth is required to participate in counseling, things like that. But that will never be a reason why a youth cannot participate in diversion. It's also true for restitution. So if a youth owes restitution for a vehicle break-in or there's some added cost to damage that was caused as a part of their case, we work with them to make a payment plan, find ways to earn extra money. But ultimately, if after that youth completes their diversion program, if there's still restitution lingering, we do not refile those cases into court. We notify our victims or our community members that they could pursue civil cases to try to get their restitution, but that's not a reason why we would file a case into court. We do our best to make our victims whole and to get restitution paid, and that certainly is an expectation up front with families, so that they need to pay that restitution, but we'll do all we can to work with them with that as well.